Hello everyone and welcome back to my opinion. And India have won this final test match in Dharamshala by innings in 64 runs, and the series has been sealed by 4 games to 1 in favour of India. On the 11s of both sides, starting off with England, they went with the 11 that I'd suggested in my previous video. And on the Indian side, Devdutt Padikkal was given a debut at number 4 in place of Rajat Patidar. On this selection call, I'd said in my previous video that who did I think was a more technically sound player out of the two who would be more likely to back across conditions. I thought Padikkal was that player. However, I would have persisted with Patidar for this game, considering I didn't want to further complicate the already complicated selection conundrum, where when the stalwarts do return at some point, you've got Padikkal, Rajat Patidar and Sarfaraz Khan to have to make way for the likes of Virat Kohli and Gill. So even though I wasn't surprised Padikkal did well in this game, and most of the batsmen on the domestic circuit, if you'd given them a debut in this game on this side of the surface, they would have done well. I wanted to streamline the options for the future, as when the stalwarts do return, you'd had a lot of players who wouldn't be able to make the side. Ben Stokes won the toss and chose to bat first. As it said for the previous test matches, this is the best chance for England to try and compete in this game. There was a nice moment before the game started where Ashwin, playing his 100th test match, was felicitated and a guard of honour was held as he walked out onto the field. Jonny Bairstow, in the build-up to this game, in the days preceding the start of this game, he also was talked about in a great light. So both these players playing their 100th test match and would have been a great milestone. The match got underway and we saw a great contest between bat and ball in the early part of the session, where especially Jasprit Bumrah's bowling some fantastic deliveries was unlucky not to get a wicket. Unfortunately, there were some loose balls bowled by both Siraj and Bumrah, and therefore the England openers capitalised. And this wasn't the rollicking start they've got off to at various times during this series. They put on 64 runs at the first wicket in 18 overs, so this was just under 4 an over. And they could have continued along their merry way when Ben Duckett, already 9 runs had been got after Kuldeep over his first over of the game. He had bided his time, scoring a less than a strike rate of 50 up to now, which hadn't been the case in the previous games. And he tries to go for the big shot on the last ball, the over was caught. So this was the first case of the batsmen throwing their wickets away from either side. A partnership was established, a small partnership was then established between Ollie Pope and Zach Crawley. And just at the stroke of lunch, Ollie Pope, when Dhruv Jurel had said from behind the stumps he was going to go down the track to Kuldeep, he did that and he was stumped. It's a case where he's been frenetic against spin, not only in this series, but even in prior series as well. The last time England toured India in 2021. I'm not surprised that after the 196 in the first game, he hasn't done too much in the next games. I thought he had exhausted his contributions, or the significance of his contributions in that game, and that's why I'm not surprised to see what we have been seeing after that point. Despite the loss of the 2 wickets, I thought England had won the first session, and it looked like things would continue along their way when 37 more runs were added post-lunch. Now, what should have happened here was that they should have bided their time and stretched out their advantage for a bit longer before looking to maybe do whatever they wanted to do. Instead, what happened, Zach Crawley, and this was the turning point in the game when Zach Crawley, a flighted delivery from Kuldeep Yadav, not a great shot from Crawley, and threw away a start. He's been England's best batsman in this series. He's the only one who's averaged just above 40. He's scored 4 half centuries in this series, and he would be disappointed that he couldn't go on to make a bigger score, especially on a surface that at that point in time, and for the first 3 days, like I said, would have been very good to bat on. From this point in time, there was a bit of a procession. Jonny Bairstow walked out of his 100th test match and played an entertaining cameo, yes, but was 29 off 18. Was that what was needed at that point in time when you've got Joe Root there? If him and Bairstow just stretched this partnership for a bit longer, England could have steadied the ship slightly, maybe got to 200 for 3, and then looked to do what they wanted to do from there. Instead, Bairstow looks to go gung-ho for in both innings. He walks out to bat. Jurut was trapped in front of a delivery from Jadeja, and apart from that, it was a bit of a procession. And from being 137 for 2, England were bundled out for 218 on a surface that was very good to bat on. And on the Indian bowling figures, Bumrah none for 51 in 13 overs, going on almost 4 and over, but I thought the figures didn't reflect the way he bowled, especially early on. Was unlucky not to get a wicket. Mohammad Siraj, like I've said many times when previewing and reviewing games in this series, I didn't feel he should have played this series. If you're looking at all the venues thus far, in Hyderabad, you saw in the first two test matches in Hyderabad and Visakhapatnam, you saw the slow nature of those surfaces. Would that suit the type of bowling Mohammad Siraj likes to do? No, it wouldn't do. He's a purely attacking bowler, and on surfaces like these, when the batsman may look to attack him, and he's got a bit of a temper as well, would he have that gear to look to contain the runs? He hasn't shown that up to now in his career, and that's why, considering the venues and the way the England batsmen would look to play, I didn't think he should have played this series. But if they wanted to play two seamers, like I've said many times now, they didn't leave other options for them to pick. They have Mukesh Kumar, Akashdeep. Would they be suited to bowling on these types of services? No, they wouldn't. So they had no choice but to play Siraj if they wanted to play two seamers. Ashwin, 4 wickets for him, 4 for 51, 11.4. Was he at his best? I still don't think so, but he cleaned up the tail at the end. And Kuldeep Yadav, he was expensive, but I thought when England had got off to their start, he picked up the initial wickets and picked up the 3 wickets to make sure India was still, they could limit the advantage that England had gained, and from then on the procession started. So a fantastic fight from him. He's had a great series with bowl and bat, and Jadeja going a less than 2 0, 1 for 17 in 11 overs. The Indian openers walked out to bat and experienced no trouble during their stays at the crease. A feature of Rohit Sharma's game was the way he played Mark Wood, and the bowlers bowled forward. It was timed sweetly to the fence, and he played a pull shot for 6, which reminded me of the shot that he played against Bangladesh in the World Cup, where the ball was bowled at a similar area and he played a similar shot. It was once again an aesthetically pleasing experience to watch him bat. And Yashasvi Jaiswal got another half century where he hit Shoaib Bashir for 3 sixes in his first over. It looked like the carnage would continue. Unfortunately for Jaiswal, he was stumped and the score than 104 and threw away his start. And if you're taking this innings and the 73 that he scored in the previous game into consideration, I thought he missed out on 2 century opportunities. But it doesn't take away from the fantastic series, the expectedly fantastic series that he's had. Shubman Gill walked out to bat, and we've seen before he likes to use his feet as the spinners. He used his feet when facing both the English spinners, and he hit them for 6s. India finished on 135 for 1 and 30 overs and were in a commanding position. On day 2, the Indian Open, the Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill continued on their way and both scored stellar centuries. On Shubman Gill's innings, I thought the 2 shots of his innings was the shots that he played off Mark Wood. First of all, to go from 42 to 46, where he played a cover drive, and then the on drive to go from, I think, 65 to 69. Rohit Sharma also used the feet against the spinners like we have seen him in the previous games as well, and both of them got to stellar centuries, and India were in an even more of a commanding position. I think they'd scored 129 without loss in the 30 overs in the first session on day 2, and it already looked like the game was put to bed when England were bowled out for 218, and now it definitely did look like there was no other result that was going to materialize apart from India going on to win this game. Both Centurions were dismissed early on in the following session at Ben Stokes after not bowling for a long while. He brought himself on and dismissed Rohit Sharma in the first ball that he bowled. From an England point of view, they'd be looking for him to be in a position to bowl a lot more during the summer. And in my view, I've always felt that his effectiveness with the balls reduced as the format has gone shorter. Especially in 2018 and 2019, I thought his bowling in red ball cricket was the best that I'd seen him bowl. So it would be a long way to go from here. However, I think for a start, him bowling a lot more in the summer would help this side. So I was happy to see him bowl again. And James Anderson picked up the wicket of Shubman Gill after a bit of an exchange. At this point in time, as I've said before, India were in no danger of losing the game even if they did collapse. But it was an opportunity for the debutant Devdutt Padikkal and for Sarfraz Khan to get another big score. He'd got a couple of 50s before this, but seeing how he's gone domestic cricket and the the surface on offer, I thought this was a chance for him to get a big score. I thought both players did no disservice to the opportunity that was provided to them. We've seen Devdutt Padikkal play through the offside in the IPL. He's quite a stylish player, and we saw that style in this innings, especially when he was playing through the offside. Sarfaraz Khan has been in great form in domestic cricket, and we know how good of a player of spin he is. However, I was intrigued to see how it would go against Mark Wood on a hard surface, and two shots caught my attention and I thought gave promising signs as to what we could expect. One, the shot down the ground off the ball that was tailing in, and he hit a boundary off that ball over the bowler's head. And the pull shot for 6, I think, to take him from 32 to 38 or somewhere around there. So those are the two shots I thought, especially against the pace of Mark Wood on a hard surface, which I hadn't seen him succeed against that sort of bowling before. And so I thought this was a promising sign for the future. From this point onwards, the dismissals weren't great, so almost every batsman gave their wicket away. And India went from 376 for 3 to, I think, 428 for 7. And there was a nice partnership between Kuldeep Yadav and Jasprit Bumrah, where Kuldeep Yadav, I feel, we couldn't have had a better series with ball and bat than he had, especially considering the batting-friendly nature of the services on offer in all 5 test matches. And Bumrah, we've seen since, I think, the 2022, that his batting has really come a long way. India were bowled out for 477. And on the English bowling card, in my view, and I spoke about this when reviewing the previous test match, I thought Ollie Robinson was scapegoated for his bowling performance, where in his 13 overs he went at just above 4 and over. And I'd said Mark Wood on a usual day was the one-dimensional way that he looks to bowl, bowling it halfway down the track a lot of the time, especially bowling in India. He would go for that 4 and over more often than not. And we saw in this case he went at almost 6 and over and was a major reason why the England bowlers struggled to apply pressure on the Indian batsmen in this innings. That's a case where, considering the hardness of the surface, theoretically, was it a bad thing for him to play? Probably not. However, I'd raised this point in the previous video as well. The reason why I'd said Ollie Robinson should have played the previous game was that even though the surface ended up playing atypically and it was a right decision to play him, I thought even if the surface did play as I thought it would, Robinson and Anderson could provide that controlling effect along with Tom Hartley and Shoaib Rashid, and they could look to squeeze the run rate of the opposition. Rather than in this case, you've got a batting-friendly track, a controlling seamer in James Anderson is going for runs in this innings based on his standards. Tom Hartley bowled 39 overs, 2 for 126. He tried to keep things in control. And Shoaib Rashid, after giving, I think, 50 runs in his first 6.5 overs, he also bounced back well, taking a 5 for, I think he's taken 17 wickets in this series, and especially for a young spinner as his first tour to India, it's a great achievement. But despite the efforts of all these bowlers, already they were going to play the controlling game. You've got Mark Wood going for 89 runs in 15 overs, and it really put a strain on the other bowlers given the options they've got. So I thought this was quite unsurprising based on how he's gone thus far when he's bowled in this tour, and we saw that happen again as well. On the third innings, nothing much to say here after Ashwin picked up the top 3. Already before this innings commenced, the outcome of the game was sealed, and so you saw Joe Root scoring 84, where even though the outcome was sealed and with wickets floating around, it was still a good innings nonetheless. But in terms of changing the outcome of the match, it was going to be delaying the inevitable. Johnny Bairstow playing another cameo, and so 29 in the first innings and 39 in this one, and there was nothing much to say about this innings from a batting point of view. On the Indian bowlers, Ashwin picking up a 5 in his 100th test match. Was he at his best again in this innings? No, he wasn't, and I don't like criticizing Ashwin, and I've never had to thus far. However, in this series, he hasn't been hitting his lengths as consistently as he would have liked. We've seen a lot of boundary balls. And having said that, he's got 26 wickets while not being at his best. So if you're getting 26 wickets in your off series, I think he would be, even though he hasn't had his best series in terms of the quality of deliveries that he's bowled, I think we can allow this one off series. and still he's got a 5 in his 100th game. Jadeja and Kuldeep Yadav, economical bowling performances from them, and India have wrapped this series up by 4-1. It should have been 5-0 if it wasn't for an embarrassing loss in the first test, where, especially after leading by 190 runs, I've never thought an Indian side playing at home would lose from that position, but they did. But they've won the series by 4-1, and in all 5 test matches, we've seen the services, especially for the first 3 days, have been friendly towards the batsmen. So I feel this was a great chance for England to compete, especially considering the negative tactics that we've seen for the majority of the series when India have been fielding. However, they haven't been able to capitalize on that, and India have won this series. So from this test match, and even from the few games they have played, we've seen Sarfraz Khan, how well he expectedly has done, scoring 3 half-centuries thus far. Yashasvi Jaiswal expectedly a great series. We'll see a lot of these performances at home from these 2 players, Padikkal and whoever. There are many players in Indian. I'm not taking any credit away from Padikkal. Like I said, I feel he was technically sound, and I didn't mind him getting this opportunity. However, with the number of batsmen that average in the high 40s or even early 50s, I feel any of those players should given them the opportunity, they would have given this kind of performance. That is the strength of the Indian domestic circuit, and I think it bodes well for Indian cricket that you've got so many players vying for these 11 slots. So the IPL will be starting soon. I'll be previewing that. I'll be previewing the fortunes of each side, so stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, share with your friends. Remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?